You ever wonder how a nation really defines itself? What its story is? A lot of the time, the answer is written down and then rewritten in its most important document, its constitution. Today, we're going to trace the story of Algeria by looking at just one thing, the status of the Tamazight language. And you'll see how a nation's identity can completely transform over half a century. Right. So let's start with this big question, because a constitution, it isn't just some dry legal document. Think of it more like a national biography. It's the moment a country stands up and tells the whole world and its own citizens, hey, this is who we are. And as we're about to see, that story can change a lot.
Just look at this for a second. On the left, you've got 1963. The Constitution says Algeria is part of the Arab Maghreb. Simple enough. Now flash forward 50-some years to the right, the 2016 version calls Algeria an Arab and Amazi country. That one little change in wording, well, it tells a huge story about a massive shift in national identity. It's a journey that took decades. So how on earth did we get from point A to point B?
Here's how we're going to break it down. We'll trace this whole evolution step by step. We'll start with the identity Algeria built right after independence, then look at the first tiny cracks of change, the major breakthroughs that followed, and finally, how Tamazight got full constitutional recognition. All right, so picture this. You're a brand new nation. One of your first jobs is to decide who you are. After Algeria gained independence in 1962, it had to do just that. And it decided to build its identity using the powerful tools of language and law, writing its vision for itself directly into its very first constitution. So in those first few decades, the mission was crystal clear. Build one unified national identity, one that was rooted in Arabism and Islam, a complete break from its French colonial past. This whole project was called Arabization, and the Constitution was its #1 tool. And our story kicks off right here, 1963. Algeria's very first constitution, drafted just a year after independence. This is the document that laid the groundwork for the country's language and culture policies for decades to come. And this one line from Article 5, wow, it says it all. Arabic is the national and official language of the state. Super clear, no room for debate. It established Arabic and only Arabic as the language of the nation. This wasn't just a description, it was a mission statement. So the main takeaway here is that this early setup was, well, it was monolithic. One identity. The Constitution legally said Algeria was an Arab nation. It locked in Arabic as the one and only state language, and it even ordered the government to push Arabization everywhere. And in all of this, there was absolutely no mention of the Amazigh language or identity. It just wasn't part of the story. But, stories rarely stay that simple. After more than 25 years, things started to get a little more complicated. In the late 80s and 90s, we start to see these first really subtle nods to a deeper history, a pre-Islamic, pre-Arab history creeping into the Constitution's intro. These were the very first whispers of a bigger, more inclusive identity. Okay, let's jump to 1989. This year was a really big deal, even if the change seemed small. After a period of huge social and political unrest, a new constitution was written, and it had a new word in it. A very old word, actually. Now, what's so fascinating here is this one word they added to the preamble. It says Algeria finds its roots since the era of Numidia. So what's Numidia? It was an ancient Amazigh kingdom. So by putting that name in there, the Constitution was, for the first time, acknowledging a history that existed before the arrival of Arabic. It was a tiny word, but it was a huge crack in that old monolithic story. And the evolution just keeps on going. 7 years later, in 1996, another update to the Constitution takes this idea even further. It moves from talking about ancient history to talking about modern identity. And there it is. The Constitution now says the core parts of Algeria's identity are Islam, Arabness, and Timzaga, or Amazighness. Now, the language itself still had no legal status, but the identity, the culture, was finally written into the nation's story. That's a huge step. The year 2002. This marks the next giant leap forward. After decades of activism and pressure from the people, Tamazight goes from being just a cultural idea in the preamble to a legally recognized language in the main text of the Constitution itself. Now, it's really important to get the context here. This change didn't just happen in a quiet government office. It was a direct result of the Black Spring of 2001. These were huge protests and riots in the Amazigh-speaking Kabyle region, and one of the central demands was for linguistic and cultural recognition. So what did this new status actually mean? Well, as a national language, Tamazight was now officially recognized as a core part of Algeria's heritage and identity. This was a massive victory for sure, but it still didn't have the same legal power as an official language. This new article, 3 bis, was the landmark text. The simple phrase, Tamazight is also a national language, was so powerful. That one word, also, placed it for the very first time inside the legal linguistic framework of the Algerian state. And that brings us to the final and most important chapter in our story. This is the moment Tamazight gets elevated to the highest possible status, putting it right up there with Arabic. It's the completion of a journey that started with those quiet whispers of Numidia. The year is 2016. Another constitutional revision is happening, and this one is about to deliver the ultimate goal for everyone who had been pushing for Tamazight recognition. And this is the difference that matters most. An official language is the language of the state itself. It's what's used in government, in courts, on official papers, the whole shebang. Getting this status meant moving from symbolic recognition to real, practical, institutional power. And here it is, the definitive line in Article 4. It now says, Tamazight is also a national and official language. Those 2 little words, and official, they are the finish line of a 50-year marathon for recognition, written into the highest law of the land. When you lay it all out on a timeline like this, you can really see what an incredible, slow and steady journey it was. I mean, from being completely invisible in 1963 to a historical nod in 89, a cultural acknowledgement in 96, getting national status in 2002, and finally full official status in 2016. It's a perfect example of how a constitution can evolve. But believe it or not, the story doesn't even stop there. The final step was to make this permanent. You see, the 2008 Constitution said that Arabic status as the official language could never be changed. But the 2020 Constitution added Tamazight to that list, so now both are protected. This means its official status can't be reversed without tearing up the whole Constitution. It's locked in. It is permanently part of the Algerian identity. Which brings us right back to our original question. The journey of Tamazight in Algeria's Constitution shows us that a nation's story is never set in stone. It can be challenged, it can be expanded, and it can be rewritten to include more of its people. So it really makes you think, what does it mean for a country when its founding document finally reflects the full, complex reality of all its people and all its history? It's a powerful reminder that the story of a nation is always a work in progress.